So far in the Smith series, we focused a lot on the modern era. Even videos dedicated to individual tanks follow this theme, with the M1 Abrams and Merkava being discussed so far. Today we're going to shake that up. We'll be taking a look at the M4 medium tank, also known as the Sherman, one of the most prolific tanks of the Second World War. The M4's history is very interesting, but its reputation is even more so. Most people fall into one of two camps. Either you hate the thing and think it was total garbage, or you think it was the best tank of the war. People have been fighting over this tank for decades, and it should go without saying, but many myths have spawned from that. We're going to be taking a look at a few of them, whether negative or positive. So without further ado, let's get into it. First, we'll talk about a myth I've touched on before, that the M4's wet ammunition stowage worked. I know a lot of you guys are already starting to write angry comments, but hear me out. After M4s received wet ammo stowage, the number of ammo fires dropped drastically. The change did massively improve survivability, but not for the reasons most people think. You see, wet ammo stowage supposedly works as so. The ammunition is kept in a bin. This bin has a jacket filled with a water glycol mixture. When the bin is struck, the jacket is perforated, so the mixture will flood the bin, hopefully preventing any fires. This is great in theory, but in practice it really didn't work out. The Soviets conducted tests with wet ammo stowage, and they found that the jacket did help, but really only through catching spall. It was essentially acting as armor. The flooding of the bin didn't actually help much. But even then, that's not the primary reason ammo fire stopped happening so much. When the wet ammo racks were installed, the ammo was moved from the sponsons down to the whole floor. This might not seem like a huge change, but think of it this way. The sponsons are one of the most likely places to be shot. The bottom of the hole is one of the least likely. So yes, if your M4 had wet ammo stowage, it was much safer to be in, but not for the reasons most people assume. For units that had these tanks, they reported burn rates as low as 10 to 15%. Prior to wet ammo stowage, it was more like 60 to 80%. Next, the idea that it took 5 Shermans to kill 1 Tiger. This one is fairly popular, but mostly with people who aren't really into AFVs. That being said, I think it's worth talking about anyway. As the chieftain pointed out, a platoon consisted of 5 tanks, so you always had at least that many. Tank fights are not chivalrous ordeals. You don't fight one-on-one. You use every advantage you have to win. Some people will say, oh, but that's what the kill ratios are. Kill ratios, especially those derived from kill claims, are highly suspect. Even more so if they are German claims. This isn't a matter of bias or anything. It's a very well documented fact. German kill claims are highly exaggerated. If you want to assess the effectiveness of a vehicle, kill ratios are not a good way to do that. This is true for every nation, but especially for Nazi Germany. If you want a famous example outside of World War II, in the Korean War, the Air Force claimed to have killed pretty much the entire North Korean armored force by themselves. I shouldn't need to tell you that this was not the case. Moving on, it's often said that the M4 stabilizer either sucked or wasn't used. Like a lot of myths, this one is based on reality, but it is highly exaggerated. If you compare the M4 stabilizer to modern systems, it's obviously going to seem lackluster. But for the time it was introduced, it was actually a pretty big deal. Technically speaking, it didn't allow for true fire on the move capability, but skilled gunners could use it to do so. It's like using a Civic to transport furniture. You could do it, but it's not exactly ideal. If you can fire semi-accurately while moving at 15 miles per hour, as the stabilizer allowed, that's much better than having to come to a stop. That wasn't the main advantage though. It allowed M4s to fire much sooner after stopping. Because of this, many people called a short stop stabilizer. At $1,000 per unit, or about $17,000 in today's money, the stabilizer is actually quite cheap. It was also easy to produce. The issue was that for quite some time, crews weren't taught how to maintain the thing, so inevitably it would break, and they wouldn't know how to fix it. Because of this, a lot of crews just stopped using them. This was eventually recognized and fixed. Now you might be wondering, if the stabilizer worked so well, why didn't the M26 Pershing have one? They actually did have a stabilizer for the Pershing's gun, and it worked quite well, but there were a few issues. For any tank entering service, there was a mandate that it should carry at least 70 rounds, and in the M26, there wasn't really enough space to do that. In order to make it work, they had to dump 2 things, wet ammo stowage and the stabilizer. They also wanted to pursue dual-axis stabilization, so the single-axis stabilizer was dropped. I know that doesn't make a lot of sense, because why not keep the single-axis stabilizer in the interim? But that's what the document says. When it comes to military procurement, things rarely make perfect sense. Anyway, that's pretty much all I've got to say for now. If you guys have missed suggestions, leave them in a comment. I'll try to talk about them in a future video. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you on the next one.